I just big nervy chawa said it, down to you. And that just be Yamlin Chihela, Rimbati and Didi Yore said it, and nervy chawas no said it, and you get Dirua, Tiza, Dineza, Di Gormashi, Shisha Kasang and Juge, Garshibari Lanada. That Jamnije, Congoyata, and Echi, you used to nature to be Sutum Soya Lasova, and Ejike. And Jig Loso Baje, and then Jing Sovatike, and the Chile Sovachiata, and Jigging Juge, and the Sansing Jigger Rangi Chit, Bejig, Panor Dungi, Sansingi Che, that Che Yamlin Chevala, Rangi Chedo, Rangi Beju Tayag Chedo, Sansing Be, Dangzam Jiggy, Jejan Bemat Gachimbo, Duangam Chimbo Mache, and Lelia, and Jig Dusjen, and Yamlin Chezo, the Che Yamle. Gasore, Chicados Gene, Yamlanche or Papi nor take a pan Yamlanche or S, Gene Embalipa, and also that the Mimo William to do Saint Shavatinik, Javana, Bashaji, Yangayobaza, and the Embala to Yamlanche or S at the Casanto, or the Korea Shivaro.
Today we're going to continue to look at the Bodhisattva's jewel garland, where the jewels of the garland of a bodhisattva are the various trainings that we have presented here. Some of these jewels that we've already looked at, or love and compassion that are generated through recognizing the great kindness that all sentient beings, without exception, without need for differentiation between them, have shown us. The great kindness they've shown us and the benefit they have been to us, life after life. Moreover, we've looked at the jewel that is the mind of ethical restraint, the commitment to restrain one's mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions, and thereby, with a restrained mind, one's body and speech will be restrained too. Also looked at the need for joyous perseverance, the delight in virtue so as to overcome obstacles such as laziness and distraction and so forth, and spoke about the need in relation to our material possessions to have modest desires so as to guard our mind from being overwhelmed by desire, our mind always being turned towards the need to acquire more, and therefore our activities follow the need to acquire more wealth rather than spiritual development. We've also looked at the need to retreat into solitude so that one can retreat from the hustle and bustle of daily life and train in a more concentrated way, away from the distraction of society.
And the Nunga Kaza, and Chigerangi, Lama, Cambodia, and Jayon, and Delia, and Gubakia, Gushep Jea, and a Kuson to some Yuyan Gushep Jea, and Delia, Rimdra Jea, Dus Jehoriation, and the Kasanti Kor, Yanchi Dineki, Shirwad and the Kasan.
And yesterday we looked at the having a respectful attitude towards one's lamas and preceptors, and that when one meets them, to interact with them in an appropriate way, a way such as that is motivated by a respectful attitude.
And le Dangbu Simchen Las, Dimbu Dushi Yabarja, says Sungaro.
Starting a new verse. Toward wise beings with Dharma eyes, and towards beginners on the path as well, consider them as your spiritual teachers.
Tanganzukasan, Sosuke Lamada, Camboda, Dinina, Desulia Be, Tonya, the Jayo, the Nia, Kusunto, Yundan. Jehebache, and the Gajin, Gushepche, and Rimruche Wores, and the Shurwada. Dinishu Zadana, Rangi, Lama Maing, and Shandala, and Dinishi Jayo Maribia Sepi, that's some of the Lissigua, did the Dininza, that Delia, and the Gansa, Chugi Michenda, Sosuke Lama, Maimbe, Pabika, Chugi Michen said, Chu said, Denshin, Dembashi. Mix said, Dembashi Topo Lolo, Dembashi wants no Topi Champa. 지상 최기 믹제스 덴바시 원순도 비 켐바 데니기 켐바 귤레디게 가사시 오래 지상 데니 가사의 파베 가사 지상 가사 최기 믹젠 파베 가사다 랑게 라마 마인바다 직데네 망고여로 바다 미샨다게 라마 데니게 파베 가사 데네 레당보에 심젤라 세데다 파베 가사 덴바시 원순 또 매바 이나양 아니 아직 람 냠내제 람 귤레게 안지가 람 소소기 뭐 람 초람바도 졸람바도 데술이야 안지 제용되네 데수이네 안지 컨줄레베 마시게 게디 삼다야다 안 구셉제야다 안델이야 안지 뜀바상이 쫌된디 나신제네 안 랑게 뜀바세디 랑기 기위신이나 랑라 최된게 기위신이 나신 빼야 우리 삼제 구셉제야다 안 데술이야 안지 rimrishaya sobada. Andi dinajeda atyambasati tyambasanye chumdede korong nashi korongi sungshibi chedike nyamlen jeje denegi jige sanyu tyamba chumdede korongi jalya dungase digi droge tablan temba nashi koronsne du stingore pe akuri smbege delia kushep du samda kushep ke ore jere.
Where we concluded yesterday was with the lines, when you see your teachers and preceptors reverently generate the wish to serve. So that should be quite clear what the meaning of those lines are, but the question then may follow, well, if I must relate to my teachers, my lamas, as with showing respect through my body, speech and mental attitude, and see them as precious, what about the beings who are not my teachers? What about those who are not my teachers? And here the lines continue. Toward wise beings with Dharma eyes and towards beginners on the path as well, consider them as your spiritual teachers. The term here, Dharma, we can understand to mean the Four Noble Truths. So beings with Dharma eyes will refer to those who have realized the Four Noble Truths. So Arya beings, those who have attained the paths of seeing and meditation. So Arya beings here, one should relate to them in the same way as one does one's own teacher. But not just the great beings, such as Arya beings, but also beginners on the path, and towards beginners on the path as well. So then these refer to those who are training in the Four Noble Truths, who are developing, who have attained lesser realizations and developing their realizations of the Four Noble Truths, and have attained the paths of accumulation and preparation, the two beginner paths. So to them, we should also relate to them with an awareness of their kindness and the benefit that they bring into the world, relate to them in a respectful manner, just like we do to our own teacher.
당주기 삼로라 심주라 마시나시라 하고 마투에서 심주라 제발 제바이나 다 딘침보단 께딘침보 슈레 삼백의 삼로디 레투고로와 메네 당주기 최딩게 라만 남기가서 가르팅 거래서네 지상아주기 체디기 디기에 마세 띵기네 대화 토비에게 답람네 띵거로 봐제 띵기다 동화사와 짜와지네 모양야다 대화 기디네 대화네 대화용배 탑람네 띵거로 지상 탈바다 탐지 김보 고방 토에게 람디 띵거래 지상 아주기 체디기 파마당 아주기 지단기 다 직디 나가서게 인기hen 라서 랍다기엔다 데니기 지기 개비게 연된디게 띵거래 이네 대수기 체 디잠기가도 튕긴 주변에 체 디기 주야도 동아시아 디잠마도 네 타 띵기 깨와 치마당 사다미 고바토야 타이비 고바토야 산지 고바토야 탑람디 람디 띵거 말와 지나 람마사 디기 나주야 체 디기 잠 동아시아 디기 주야 잠 마세 깨와 치마이네양 사다미 고 땡델레 디기 야기 탑람도 소스냠는 데네데 지고레스 안델레 띵기 대와 타르바세 토야리아 남냠레 디네체 디니 공고레스 디제바나 띵기 대와 토기디니 대와마도 동아자와기니 메바 토고레스 디나지 괜군세 연된 탐지가 토에 산유 고마 토야데 탑람디니 디니치는 냠레 디지 고레세 두스 띵고라 디니 띵기 여바도 지나가서 심주에 삼다데 라마세 베 마시케진 쳔보지다 시호제 게진 쳔보레 선비다 네 영아 저기 게진 쳔비기 삼로디 디니슬레 투고르와
As I mentioned yesterday, with all topics of the Dharma, including this one, of recollecting the kindness that others show us, it's important to investigate, to analyze, to think for ourselves. Because if we don't do so, we're not going to, in this instance of recalling the kindness, we're not going to give rise to much recollection without analysis and investigation. And therefore, we will miss the profound meaning that can be, or the profound benefits that can be attained from this reflection. The reason that our Lama, our spiritual teacher, is to be seen as supremely kind amongst all the kindness that all beings show us, the kindness that our Lama shows us is incomparable. And this is because our spiritual teacher shows us the path, how to accumulate the causes for happiness, lasting, stable happiness of liberation and enlightenment, as well as how to eliminate the causes that would otherwise lead to further suffering, and how to turn away from accumulating new causes that will otherwise lead to suffering. So this sets our spiritual mentor out from all others. Our school teachers and many other people have shown us a lot of kindness directly in this one life. And the benefit they have given us needs to be recognized and repaid. But the benefit they've given us is really largely just about this one life. It's not directly benefiting our future lives. Certainly their motivation wasn't to benefit us from lifetime to lifetime. Whereas our spiritual teacher, the situation is so different. The guidance they give us in this life helps us achieve happiness and overcome problems in this life, as well as to create the causes for continuing to progress towards the states of enlightenment and liberation. So it's through thinking like this, analyzing like this, that we come to see our spiritual mentor as supremely kind.
gyukaga yoban gyu de la tene gyu gan de shiwen de la tene debu de ka ka chi li gore chang an zo xingdo de tuan do chang gyu me ba le yong go ma chang de ne za nga zo gyu di nga zo xingba de ge an tuan do tab ya de debu saban de ne tab na debu de yong go se ba ha ku go ro ba chang den saban da ma ra tab shi ta shi tab ya de ne debu tuan do da ma ra nga zo pe shi ta ya ra go ro di na shi ji gu ji ya le ben de tuan do ge de gyu ji me de saban ji me na tuan do ge me do di nashi nga zuki mi se da anjiki dunruwa se da dine cha da rida da simchan da ma kanda chiyo bana chasa gyu de gyu chi le dine dhugo re gyu dha ma re gyu kha yo re chisa nga zu mi na ya ane karo yor sane mi kashi wane jike saji dike gyo be ne na za mango yo da mak shu mango yo da saji zokpa da dine ki gala ne ho ya 미카시 안에 지게 사지 기우 안에 지 개합되게 돼서 장마다 안에 시대에다 되네게 네트워야 아니 미나 카실야 아니 미카실 지 내가 가르치나 람로 야고 용하다 내나서 시라 마용가 야고 용하 미카시 안지게 아직 배 교보제 안에 지게 교보시고체다 세세 동야다 되네게 강아 직지 안에 지게 안에 내나서 망보여 되긴 안에 내가 아주 직다 말하는데 this chazan gyudan kyen le tene yung gyudan kyen le tene nganzu mi gi this kyewa ngamay nganzu gyudan kyen le sa pe ge samla ta thang yu thone yung go re chazan dine za nganzu gyudan kyen le tene yung go re se nang bi ge tarup gi zo di xian le tue ni zhup go ma da kan le ma de ba zhup de ji yo ma re s ye ba kan de ye ba na ya ko xian ji le tue ni yung go re se ji tue zhup de da wa tue zhup se de xi go song go wa chazan.
In our gardens, in your gardens, I'm sure there are a wide variety of different flowers, all of which you enjoy, all of which you receive the benefit of enjoyment from this wide variety of flowers. From this wide variety of flowers, These are results that have come from a wide variety of causes. Similarly, amongst sentient beings, there are humans, there are many types of animals, birds, insects, wild animals, and so forth, and other types of unseen beings. It's a wide variety, all coming from a wide variety of causes. And then if we look at the situation amongst humans, again we'll see such a wide variety here too. We'll see those who live in countries which are peaceful, where there is the rule of law. And others live in countries which are corrupt. Some live in violent societies. Some seem to experience one illness after the other. Others are always healthy. So there's this wide variety within beings as well, amongst humans. And this variety all comes about in dependence on a variety of causes. And this is a foundational teaching of Buddhism, cause and effect, that everything that exists is a dependent arising. Phenomena exist dependent on causes. Everything that exists dependently, dependent one thing on another. And this is a teaching of dependency, cause and effect. These are foundational teachings within the Buddha Dharma.
Adini za da range lama le kushep chegoris and deva che dan kushep chegore and shengi and chige pape gansa dan lam nyemlen cholamba cholamba ti khozuine kushep chegore says je sungorwa da di garre labna kushep cheba na soso rangi lama dan and shenlia kushep cheba dan deva cheba ina and soso lama de ichili gorwa iche dan kushep lena lama di zel chue nyen le ya an de wa shu che li go re ji san da lama ji chue nyen bai na nga di zel lob chong jang bai na nga so ma nga xin gi ro la lam du nga se di gi tab la ma nga xin go ro wa ji san di nga so lo go ya gi don da la ma do nga zo lama la de ba chi na lama di pe shu ya ge ro ya da de ba ma je ba na lama de ma ge ro ya de ni sky ke wa ka sin de nga zo de ba che na ma je na na mi ko ro yen den ka ro yen na 다라마도 겨줘야 마두줘 야줘야 말아. 지난 강아주 대바지나 강아주를 갈리고서 샹려 대바의 이시던 구베 제바는 디자인의 연된 자야게 되바기요. 근데 대바도 구베면 아니 디자인이야 자야게 되바기가 말아. 안진사 구바단 대식 좀도제도 최고를 해야지 소소기 디자인의 연된 공자의 연된 자야게 그 라비야게 냠는 제야게 고합디 야고 영야게 된다라 안 숨고래제 맞아 냠는 지역이 튕긴 채고를 규채고로 와.
In these three lines and the two before, it's presented that we should relate to our teachers with respect, and we should relate to those who are similar to our teachers, other Arya beings as well as those on the beginning paths, with respect. So respect comes about in dependence on the cultivation of trust in this person. We are more likely to respect someone whom we trust. Now, why is this important? Why is this emphasized here over several lines, that we need to relate to our teacher and those like him with respect? Because if we trust someone, we're likely to respect them, and this opens us up to them. We are more open and receptive to their guidance. We can perhaps understand this more clearly through the opposite situation. If we don't trust someone, we're not going to respect them, and we are certainly unlikely to accept their advice. That person whom we don't trust, whom we don't respect, they are unlikely to have a positive influence on us. And that's because we are unlikely to be receptive to them. So here we are encouraged to reflect on the great qualities of our teacher. In this way, we'll trust them ever more, our respect for them will grow, and this will open us up to their guidance, their positive influence, and that leads to our spiritual development continuing. It opens us up to developing ever greater qualities within ourselves.
Lobsang Dorje yabu라 차바이나 아니 라마야 아니 지게 오다 구십시라 메바 바시 드네 용시고래 지자당 아야고샤 달라마당이 콜레미 연대 가신 바된 이 신규에 말에 달하와지의 신규 말씀이 되네 삼로 용시고래 지단 되네가 마요에 돈달라 구십지고래서 다디 구십 되네 삼려 바이나 가서는 나겔리기로와 어당 하신거다 말에 네 차상 신규에 달라만 강하시는 이 신규에 달라마전 최슈와요 말했어 선배게 삼로 나겔리기로와 지단 나겔기에게 마기에게 돈달라 할라마야 구십지고래서 진의 금전진의 디래
There certainly is a danger that someone who is highly educated may look down on their spiritual teacher thinking, I know so much. And the problem here, of course, is in this way, this person opens themselves up to pride, thinking that they are superior to their teacher, looking down on their teacher. And with such an attitude, they're unlikely to want to attend any more teachings. They will have the attitude, I've learned what I can from this person, because they're now looking down on them. And even if they do go out of a sense of obligation, they won't be sitting there with an open mind, with a receptive mind, but rather their mind will be afflicted, looking down on the teacher, criticizing the teacher.
Belia da be nyamlen ba shu jong na shu chung ro ji mi le re ba sa ki da chim shu chung ro je zan ji mi le re ba ko ron ge lo ma la ma ri chung ba sa ji re da ko ron ji mi le re ba zen chu shin be nyamlen ya go shu do ba ya go shu jue so ro da ni mi ji la ma ri chung ba sa di ko ron sam na la ga ro ko ba re la ne o da ngi la ma ji mi le re ba ge da yuen de nga ni ji ba re sa nga le 다 그런 강시바 네 차사 신사 당연히 직과를 연된 마선나 직과에 선비게 삼는데 코르제 됐은 아자로 직레스로 와다 라마 지즈밀라르 로마 라마 레숑 바사들 나게레스로 와 데니기 나게 레바레스다 두스게 바레스 제자 레숑 바살라 지즈밀라르 게두제 다 콜랑 아게디 라마 레숑 바레와다 라마 지즈미 가서 밀라르비 연된 차상 아유 코신 알레 다 와서 신고마다 나니 직바 인선비게 나게 레바레제.
There's a story of this where a practitioner called Rikchungpa, he trained well under his teacher Milarepa and developed some good qualities. But then pride arose within him, and he looked at Milarepa, at his teacher Milarepa, from a perspective of pride, thinking, my qualities now are the same as my teacher, the same as Milarepa.
Di na jiz Milarepa ge kwalya dosine ngage ki yo ba de jiz Milarepa kembare. Kenjen de ni meji jiz Milarepa ge lama de koroloma rechum ba de ring ani do sen kyamkyam jogo so kyamkyam tirore. Ki tirone be bang ja chen bo shu ji ga la ya xing dong da de ne ge ka me ga bang bang chen bo shu ji na la chi. An de ya ni ma ya ge rajo ji yo res rajo ji yo re ji le. Dinege ya rajo chi on dinege sajin la teacher and jizmilere beke and ma teacher din jizmilere zuri de be sera ba presa sera ba sho o ju shuk chimo sho ba che be da ka bya me ro khang ban me sing do me yipsa gyuni me ro jide jizmilere ba di zuri de je ya ge rajo nan ba ju song re ju chi ne gu zu de nga zu gu zu be chen bu 넘긴 나셔야 봐지 야가라죠 충충마도요 말봐 원래전에 충충 차고요 말 이제 파 제뒤 qabla 구수도 빼 침부 하랬어 이나 야가라죠 됐다나 치료 야가라죠 됐다 야가라죠 침부요 말 충충마도요 말했어 제가 지금 밀러를 비디난 주이시네 데데데 사라카세 겹네 야가라죠 돼 깝진 강하셔야 말봐 단 라모 제중바델라 로마델라 디나네 주투에게 누버요 말고 그 주투 토요 말다 가선 야게 라죠 충충나로 고 수부 침버디 주투에게 콜라 주투 떠야게 되는게 주투에게 누버 매바래다 매디 되네 스타라쇼 제마 잡도 고 강아지 고래 데데다 람 지즈 밀러르베게 송하래 오 로마 그 당하다 똑바 전자 여배는 디나로 추쇼서 디나쇼 치료 되고 막 디나로 쇼서 그래제
Milarepa, of course, was aware of the pride that was dominating his student. So one beautiful, lovely spring day, he took him for a walk to a wide and expansive plain. The sky was clear, the flowers were in bloom, it was really quite magnificent. Then suddenly from nowhere, it started to hail. On this clear sunny day, it suddenly started to hail. Now the two of them are in this wide open plain. There's nowhere to take cover. But there was some horns from a dead yak lying there in this plain. So Milarepa, with his powers, was able to take cover under these horns. Now, of course, horns of a yak are just so big, nothing like a human size. But Milarepa, with his great attainment, was able to take cover from the hail. Now, his student, Rikchumpa, the one of great pride, he wasn't able to manipulate himself, his body, so that he could take cover under something so small. And Milarepa, taking cover, called him over, said, "Come out of the hail, come protect yourself. I can see you taking a pounding from all this hail." But Rikchumpa couldn't.
And dine za Lam Rim dine pe basivi ngi dine ngaje jebadi pe noshas la ngi nga masin pe Lam Rim de shu chen thakba ane jizmile dewa shu jebare jere.
And of course, this helped rebalance Rikchumpa's perspective. And he was shaken out of this delusion of pride and generated once again deep felt respect for his teacher, Milarepa.
Jidane, Loma Yune, Yabochidu, Lamalia, and Jigan, Renda Yin, Sambiki, and then I get the Lamalia, that is an Chushu, Sambiki, some Loyon Sigoroa, Dinenza, on Denigi Chigio Mares, now to get Denigi, now to machine be Lamalu, the Yungur, Chesa Dinenza, Lamalia, Kushipcha, Kichimburi, and Nagamajiga, Dundal Sungur.
So there really is a grave danger of pride arising towards someone who's so much more spiritually developed than oneself, one's own spiritual mentor. And this can come for any reasons, but one should be aware of the danger of pride. One may have skills or knowledge that one doesn't see in one's teacher, know things that he doesn't, but that is not on its own a suitable basis for pride, for the affliction of pride to arise. The way to counteract pride is to reflect on the many good qualities, especially qualities of great value that one's teacher has, and thereby generate sincere respect for one's teacher.
Rangi lama da yunden chen zane yunden jaya go gohapti digi ka go res parchi chi go chesa yunden jaya go gohap ka na yunden sing ma res chesa rang la parchi chi go res chesa da ngaje di meba soya la nyembo ro ka ting go res gu shep che de shan le gu gu zi de gu shep che de yunden shen gi yunden je pe ya gu de sam an ji de le gu shep che de de ge sam lo kho wa na de ngaje yungu ma ngaje ka go chesa da du chine 나게 마게게 돈달라 먼저 삼라 가르던 것은 구십제다 안데 제리야 윤대한테 그린제 봐 삼당 거래서 그렇단다.
Pride is an affliction that poses great danger, because when pride arises within us, it closes us to the possibility of spiritual development. It closes us to receiving the Dharma. It closes us to developing good qualities. We need to recognize the danger of pride so that with conscientiousness and mindfulness and vigilance, we can be aware of its potential arisal. The antidote to pride is to remind ourselves of the good qualities of others and thereby generate respect for their good qualities. Moreover, a second antidote is to remind ourselves of the kindness that others show us, the benefits that they directly or indirectly bring to us. So reminding ourselves of the good qualities of others, their kindness, as well as the benefit that we receive from them. This will help to reduce the possibility of pride arising, and rather respect for the good qualities and kindness of others will arise.
Semjen Tamji Tongwe Pama Buzi Dushiki.
Then the text continues. In fact, when you see any sentient being, view them as your parent or child.
Semjen Digi Tongwe said, and Karsam Tankuri, Lanang Pamadam Buzi, Sembigi, Rangle, Mili Shajabaina, Rangle, Gambaji, and Kiaba and Kiaba Tona, Rangi Pama Pari, Sembigi Pagi Dushe. Da Kiama Moina, Rangi Ama in Sembigi, Dushe some Tankores. Daya Rangle, Schemberg, Chungar Tona, I think a bui in some buina, me bui in some other. Bomina, me bomber in Sembigi, Sosugi, Busa, Res about Dushisa. Dile by Chunju Ratana, that is only Tao, me Bugu Res and Big, Dusin, Dushiki or Dushisha or Edge.
Here now, turning to our attention towards any sentient being, the way we should relate to them, if they are older than us, is we should relate to them as if in a similar way that we relate to our parents. And if they are younger than us, we can relate to them in a similar way that we relate to our children. And if they are much younger than us, we can relate to them in a similar way that we would relate to our grandchildren.
The main bachelor, somebody did not to sugar or some catalog or some dancer.
But it is possible you think this is really stupid advice.
Rangi Pama Mayan Bala Pamare Lamnekars over there, Rangipu Mayan Pugores and the Karsam Gotangors. Chesan Denigi, then Nordic, Taga, Chemeki, me Labkendi, Be Kupo Kupo race, the Kodu de sometimes didn't dancer.
Because we've heard so many times, we're supposed to be developing our wisdom using analysis and reasoning, and here we are being told to relate to people that we are not our relatives as if they are our parents or our children, when this is not the case. And we may well end up thinking, whoever wrote this really was a little strange, they didn't know what they were saying.
Gambala, Rangle, Gamba Tona, Delia, Kushab Mabachea, and Tonchong Daya, that did Gangora, the Kotuchada, Tonchong Daya, Denigi, and the Yungurua, you didn't Tonchong Daya, that Denigi, never Kiala Sobat. This is Rangle, Shenbegeda, Chige, Kevena, Buddha Bomena, that Delia, Hanchige, Gohor Daya Sobata, Jeba Zuchea, to them between Jebachea, Denigi, Yungurua, Cesar. Dine Yunkure. Di Samno Nane, Gariton Ligorasine, Samlu Ton Ligorua. Chesa di Rang Gamba di Ton de Pamegi Dushi, some big Dushi Shabaina, Delia, Rangi Pamala, and Zilun Chair, down Guship Chair, Ranshingi, Pamalia, Nubiki, Samastaya, the Bear, New Ligurata. Disang Pamari, some Tabana, Dushi Shabaina, Pamari, some Dushi Shabaina, Delia, Guship Ligire. And Delia, Tonchon Diadi, Yungumare, some of the Yungma, Dika, Dandala, and the Gasuri to permit to Shahuri. Now, Ranle, Shamba, Chunalaya, Sosig Bugu down, and Tawoda to Shahur Labdi, Sosig Pamasuine, Sosipul, Zewa Sujamara, Sosipul, Zewa, Sosig Tawal Zewa, Chesam Consola Ganga Sena, Ganga Seata, and Consola Digu to Biagi, some the Ligua, and Rangi Tawad and Buina, Desolia, and Chikzubuche, the Jebang and Bache, the Yungmarwa, Diniza, Dele Cheban, Rango machine by the Suina, the nigger Sosig Bud and Sehu Dushishavana, and Consolia. Pembige Javachi, Pando, some Pessim Giata, Consulia Yabochiata, and Consul Ganga Mategi, Cabar Yungur. Denisa, Denige Samlo de Ganga Jea, Nubiki, Samlo de Kayake Dondala, Mazuki, Bugita, Savi Dushishavan, Delia Zivi Sambaligo, Zivi Sambalena, Dela Nubiki Sambaligo, Dikayake Dondala, and Tawada, and Kasapuda, Savi Dushisha, some Tangores, Gimzendia.
The teaching here then is to relate to others as in a way similar to how we relate to our own relatives. So for example, to those who are older than us, that we are here to see them as your parents, in a way similar to one's parents, means that this will guard us against from what perhaps we do, or we certainly will observe in society, that all too often those who are much older, they are looked down on by society, they are disrespected, they are seen in a negative way, their needs are ignored. And seeing them in this way on its own is harmful. But from this way of thinking, further harmful minds may follow. See, when you look down on someone and disrespect them, it's all too likely one may deceive them or take advantage of them. So here, the reason why one would treat such a person in this way, an older person in such a way, comes from our way of thinking. So this is what we need to change. Rather, especially if we have meditated well on the kindness that our parents have shown us, and we therefore have deep respect and gratitude for our parents, even if they are old and infirm, we can then take that same thinking and apply it to others, to those who are older too, and rather appreciate the kindness that they have shown, whether to us or to others, or the benefit they've brought to us or to others, but relate to them in a way similar to how one relates to one's parents. And similarly with those that are younger to oneself. So there may be no relative, but treat them as if they are your own children, or rather relate to them in a way that's similar to how one relates to one's own children or grandchildren. Because if one does, one will readily help them. One will readily show them kindness and treat them with care. So this way of thinking is a skillful means to prevent afflicted minds such as harmful intent or other harsh minds from arising, which just their mere arisal brings us unhappiness, and their expression brings unhappiness to others.
That was in some data share, some of the Tibetan Jawata and Jamzel Eturi, Chisa, Denigili, Jamba, Zewa Lebaina, and the Shanley, Nubi, somebody young Maria says, Chakanjo, don't that particular Carson was in a Benesh. Shanlia, Nubi, somebody, Shanlia, Gangachune, Delia, Nangmeta, Samnodi, Yahweh Maris, Chesan Dipaka, Horace, Dikaya la, Shanley Zewada, Jamze Yoyada, Shanley Pembe, Samno Yoyadi, Tablamkara, some Tangorsen, Rangi, Gambala, Pamares, and Betushaya, Shumbala, Budan, and Towers, Dushisha, do some Tangores, Tablam de Sungorova.
Thinking, relating to others in a way similar to if they were as one's parent, in a way similar to how one relates to one's parents or one's children, this closes the door to us harming them, for us disrespecting them, not caring about them. Moreover, it prepares the ground, gives us the mental space to develop love and compassion for them, to relate to them with love, to relate to them with kindness and compassion.
난今年 심전 탐지 통외제 파단 부미 부치 두시 계세디 지상한 저 장주 셈 냠는 지야라 잠니 제 냠는 지야 잠니는 냠지도 당번에 가지고 균제 맹가 둥균나네 계시 어디가라 심전 탐제랑 게 파마제 용화디 검고고로와 디네자 심전 간에 통외네 제미다 둔로다 부생간에 통외네 디수차사 랑게 파마마고 제 용화래 선비게 파마제 용화래 디네자 랑게 파마 제베 다데 체디기 파마 제베 갑라 체디기 파마디가 라리아 기딘 쳔보 진 쳔보 기딘 쫑아 나신 콘도 차상이 파마 제용아 짠야래 제사 파마 제디 갑라 다 체디기 기딘 파메 라라 기딘 제바 나진 콘주기 기딘 쳔 쫑요래 선배게 두 삼다야다 데네 안데 통에 디서 차상이 네 부고 짠야 망고 제용요 네 부고 제 중요라 네 처우 중요 제 중요하래 제상 만주베 저와 타니고 요건 짠야래 디자 심리 코스 차살야 네 잠부 제고래 자와 제고래 콜레 동아시아 디기두야래 네 판도 제고래 선배게 삼로 코야게 된다라 랑기 에너지게 심자 탐제 랑기 파마지 용화 심자 탐제 랑기 안 부고다 처우지 용화디 모두 삼당고래서 그랬다.
Then to take this way of thinking to a deeper level, expanding our mind. When a bodhisattva trains in love and compassion, this training of love and compassion is part of the 6 cause and 1 effect method. And this commences with the recognition of the close and intimate relationship that all beings share with each other. That since beginningless time, we have all had a relationship of parent and child. In fact, not just once, but many times. So therefore, every being that we interact with, directly or indirectly, has been our parent in a preceding life. Every being. Similarly, every being we interact with, we have had the relationship where we have been the parent and they have been our child. So thinking like this then, this takes us, this training, to a closer level, to not merely a mere theoretical level, but an emotionally closer level, where every being one meets is one's mother or father from a previous life, is one's son or daughter from a previous life. And it's only due to the passage of time that one isn't directly aware of it now. But that relationship, this connection, still exists. Renounce negative friendships and rely on a spiritual mentor.
Kuigi denigi jigibe kumaja la kobu shuige michi tu soban soso rawa mena dedanim do jogajina kuyi shawang do song baina soso kumaja charu kores ane ya ji mi kashe ji miliabe tubje daya zewang daya de denigi yugen jiben desunim do jogo chebaina tang ha ju samlo de rawa mena kuyi di shukin cheche de nga ju ina di chol joya ge ninga yores jesa denesa soso ge la rawa mibi negabla ya desunim
Negative friendships then will be companions or friends who encourage our way of thinking, our mind to go in an afflicted direction, in a harmful direction. These friendships, when we spend time with such people, we see from the way that we speak, and maybe even the way that we act, it's becoming quite distant from what is presented in the Dharma, and rather is very mundane, it's very afflicted. Maybe we gossip a lot, we talk harshly about others, criticize others, or we even perhaps are encouraged to engage in illegal activity. So here where we have friendships, which are where we are led in a harmful direction. Such friendships, it's better we keep our distance from such people. It's better we separate ourselves from such people, because spending time around them leads to our habituation to the afflictions growing stronger, whereas that is exactly what we are trying to weaken and break, our habituation to the afflictions.
That jige jobang amba chaya ta kumaja la gobo ta shanliya tubje ta la gobo ta an jige dinigi just jangling taring styo gores desunim do duschene nyamdo tikche yego mare sedi dandala konsolya yabu mare konso be dugje konso tongchong da jene taring styo gores joji gyo mare dilagyo mare danda khala gosun 소소 라랑에 샘송 교체고 그래. 제가 소소를 라왕 매봐 소소게 샘din 라왕 매나 네 고정이 두치네 미지게 어디는 아주 지기 구마시고 저거는 어디 소소에나 라왕 매베 삼는 거네 어디 레레서 드로바이나 네 드로시기리스 계시 드로바이나 디게 강아 가르지 신이체라 구마고데 샹라 뉴고레스 Digi Kumagu Nani the social social kangatiki, Chizan Rashiniga kangatikis, Chizan to Kumakuya, Samlo Kiegi, Kinjitin, Dine Sosolia kangatiko, Sosuga Samlo, Dukja Mahoya, Tondala, Delia, just to subsubchin Padio, Resaji, and Disungorwa. Mado, Naji Kondobe Dukja, Kondobe Yago Mars and Kondo Tonjo, Kondola Javajiki or Marasun Goman, the Soso Rangi, Samlo di Nambi Cholo Dogres, and Deni Troban, Yabumare, Samje, Disunya Tondala, and Javajiki or Maresaji, Sungor.
An important point to make here, because as always in the Buddha Dharma, it's about taking care of your mind, changing, transforming our mind. So where we recognize that a particular friendship is having a negative impact on us in terms of that our afflictions are arising when we tend to be around them, here we need to take care of our mind and have the correct attitude towards this person. We should not be seeing them as a harmful person or a bad person. We should not be criticizing them or looking down on them. We certainly shouldn't see ourselves as better than them. Rather, the attitude that we should have is that right now, I am not yet ready, I'm not yet developed enough to be in their company and to guard my mind, to keep my mind virtuous in their presence. I'm not yet developed enough to have a beneficial impact on them and take care of myself. Because I'm not yet developed sufficiently, I need to develop further. And with this understanding, one separates, one takes some distance. And this comes from a recognition that through keeping this friendship, this relationship, both parties are creating the causes that lead to suffering, both now in the interactions, as well as in future lives, through the ripening of the karma that is being created. So we recognize that this is about our need to spiritually develop further. It's about fulfilling our desire to become the person we long to be, and recognizing that right now, being around this person is a hindrance to that. But such an attitude, though, is free from looking down at the other person or criticizing the other person, but rather, with a positive attitude, one for now separates oneself and focuses on one's own spiritual development.
Na sosolya dinigi nyomdu jogo chewe ne soso gi samlo de konju gi xiangwa de ma zhou ba zhou tu me ba che soso de sem tembu yo ba che ane soso gi sem tembu yo ba che to ne ko le rang gi robo che che pan do che ko gi samlo de gumo gu ye gumo la ko wi ne gumo gu ye ge dan da le ya tablam che ke 야바다 되네기 쥐방 한번 밀려 녀버지야다 되네기 강아대 삼로 주변에 네 삼로 뒤에 파규시네 샹랴 펜베 삼 다야기 소설야 뉴버 코에 샹와도 마송와 쟁아 랑기 셈 템부네 투바다 랑기 뉴비 토네 코에 셈바도 규어지 상주의 토네 야고지 규투예게 된다라 아주 코님도 조고체 되네기 뉴버 여바나 딩님도 조고체 안디 코에게 쥐바 야부 멤바디 쥐바 이 상모를 규야다 배 지게 삼로 야부 용하다 누시네 탑시 땅 고레스 되네야 조고체 우호를 조고제제 안두시네 코야 야부지 용하야 된다라 아주 배주시 탑시 규투바 제고레제래.
This advice then is for those who right now are unable to guard their mind and keep their mind virtuous in the presence of someone who is particularly afflicted, someone who's encouraging oneself to engage in non-virtue, whether it's through speaking or even physical activity. But when one is spiritually developed, or certainly if one separates, the goal would be to spiritually develop to the extent that one can engage with such people in the future, where those beings who are most dominated by the afflictions, that they so readily engage in harmful behavior, physical and verbal behavior, that one needs to become a spiritual adept, that one can spend time with them, and not only protect one's own mind, but be a positive influence on them. So one has a connection with this person now, but right now this relationship is not beneficial. So with an aspiration of separation, so that one can spiritually develop further, and at a future time, when one is able to not only be with them and protect one's own mind, but utilize this connection that one has to turn them away from non-virtue, one now separates oneself and focuses on spiritual development, so that in the future, that one can help others, in particular, those most in need.
Jita soso rangi nubara shuebe na denyi no chenpo che, rokpo che, an kyona dini chikyo ma dini chebe na mi shandal nugire soso li ne, an jema, an je nyendo beke nyeba te ata kanga tigire, jita jini chikyo ma, dan kyona la kanga te ngi du su tueso rokpo chigire, sembe jin chego ri, jigin sibi dini jini ko rokpo tueso che ata, ni ko le jige jambu che ata, jamze chebe na, kosu kagirwa jisang ana juge gaboyena sosula gaboyena sosuge kishedi ko nyingirwa ondu chene andus chene ba ni roba cheche denege jige jobang ba chaya da denege jigme jobang denena dusi roba sanju gyugores da denege sosolya denege nuba meba soso samno de gyuchoje mi shandage gallamna denege gyuchoje yoba ina jisang dene sapsap cheche andus chene der dos de jawmaje gyugores kimsendire.
If we take an illustration, if we have a relationship with someone who's perhaps a thief, they have a great desire for material wealth. Maybe maybe they have a genuine need for their material needs to be fulfilled, or maybe they just this is how they consider their business. So when we are influenced by them and we may go along with their behavior, here we have to really take care. And it's better to separate ourselves. If we are able to take care of our mind and have a positive influence on such a person, where from a place of an attitude of genuine loving kindness, without looking down or condescending them, we can communicate with them in a way that they are also receptive from. So it's from both sides. One's own mind is one of loving kindness, and from their side they are receptive to one. Then one can advise them to rather stop stealing from others, explain the impact that this has on others, explain the likely legal consequences that will follow, that these aren't just theoretical, they will follow at some point. And if one is then coming from a place of loving kindness towards them, and they are receptive to one can have a positive impact on them. One can be of benefit to them. So this is the objective. But if that is not the case, if one can't have such an impact on them, and certainly if one's own mind has been taken in a negative direction, then it's better to separate oneself.
Da dine inza da kiwi shin tembar cha sidu chizang sosu ge samlo di tembu tade tembu medi kabla dine ki tibi dropa da nyum chebena sosu samlo de di chol dro shin nyanga kangla chego dine inza deli ba ane kiwi shin temba ina kiwi shin digi karatingol dine tichine yakwe omar nyamlen tu shi gore sa on du shin pa lobtuen che lapche kyap nyamlen ko rimba de tenyo du dewi shin tenje dizale du yang ne nyamba yin na nyen che cheba yin so su ge samlo du shin de yar to tim du ri se ko da dewi shin den bar chas.
Recognizing the need to spiritually develop further, then who we should be relying on is our spiritual mentor. We should be relying on our spiritual mentor with respect and being open to his guidance. And in this way, we'll be able to spiritually develop ourselves through hearing teachings and reflecting on their meaning. And thereby, as we grow spiritually, we too will be able to be of greater benefit to others, including those to whom in the past we couldn't be. Dispel hostility and unpleasantness and venture forth to where happiness lies.
Dangwa sene shanla magawa magiwe samlo shanla magiwe samlo kiya dang ta midiye sem sedu bene midiye shanla kibu meba soyage samlo minyi tumbu yobe ne parade dukshin jamne jige tumbu meba so midiye soyage samlo shanla nebe samlo denige da dirwa bene midiye sem sedu da dinan mangoli gere bene shengi jalade 구고 sambene shanla midiye soygora 아니 제 민이 전부 여번에 디바데 어디 코니 전부도 코니 바 죽신제 코니 기우메바 카 차고도 선배게 데네 삼단 죽신제게 삼도디에 네 미디베 삼체 데네 삼도 코바이나 샹라 먹여베 삼바 샹레 뇌베기에 강아제게 삼도디 다교 말해서 데니게 삼다바이나 디게 삼도디게 벤데 샹라 마케베 삼바다 샹기 죽신제데 샹라 기우메바 소고 선배 삼로 지어바이나 아니 디니 삼로디기 가제 슈처처베네 슈가제체나 디기 류하게 넘줄때 통고로 와다 베니 와다 삼로 축충충만다 람산 지리 말와 슈첨보여나 되네 디기 아니 야 가제 슈처저베나 삼로 디기 낀제네 류하게 넘중안 바트 아니 샹레야 주신자야다 거디디라기도 거디디라기도 하서 되네 권이 미팅 봐서 마기 봐서야다 아니 안지게 야래 균지 당위 마하외 삼바여나 델리아 네비에게 균주제야다 안지게 류가 류기원에 다 류가비 줘봐다 말을 진실라 강아제 연구로와 지산 디니 삼로디 샬라 미가베 삼바다 샬라 네비에게 삼로디 방구 계시요 말디 방구 그래서 다다 미디에 셈방신스
Dispel hostility and unpleasantness. So this refers to dispelling a particular attitude, an attitude that's similar to harmful intent. Refers here to the way that one interacts with others, and that the way that one interacts with others brings harm to them, destroys any happiness they may have, destroys any peace of mind that they may have. And here, it could be in a physical manner, in a physical expression, either conflict or stealing from them, bringing unhappiness into the lives of others, or the way that one speaks to others in a harsh way, in an arrogant way, in a belittling way. So in these and so many ways, one can act that in a manner that brings harm to others. And this, of course, again comes from a way of thinking that has an attitude of harm towards others, doesn't regard them, but actually is really negative towards them. And the stronger this attitude is within us, the more frequent, for a lesser reason, will a harmful attitude towards others arise. We'll more easily, more readily engage in an unpleasant manner with others. So the stronger this way of thinking is with us, the easier it will arise, the longer it will last. So therefore, we need to guard against having any form of hostility or unpleasantness towards others.
Da digi dan samlo du shukche judu dela tene joba ngamba leyo de nga zogi le ngamba sa jewa chimai ne nga zogi dunga yoya ga gyusa gores denige samlo di ba shukche joba ne nga zo tarba da tamji kimbe tobaye la yan bashi chi gores jesa di samlo di ba mepang go gores yaso dana di sung gore gyumzen di samlo di yabu mare no chu res de nga zogi di de meba so ya di res goda.
When we interact with others in this way, very clearly we aren't valuing them. We're only valuing ourselves and our needs being fulfilled. So here then, reflect on the actual impact to oneself. Because if we are acting in such a self-obsessed manner, a self-cherishing manner, then reflect on the actual impact it has on us. When harmful intent or an attitude of hostility arises within us, no one's happy. We may feel strength and power, but our mind is not calm and at ease. So we suffer immediately. Moreover, the mere arisal and abiding, and certainly the expression of such a way of thinking creates karma that when it ripens in our future lives will lead to ever more suffering for ourselves. And then thirdly, not only in the short term and the long term is there suffering, but thirdly, this way of thinking, this afflictive way of thinking, creates obstacles to our spiritual development, and in particular our attainment of liberation from cyclic existence and enlightenment itself.
Bendigo samlojiyo bayna danganzu lyungagu jewari matyen bayneda pashe midige samla garu kogu hagumarwa kole de sharanya yo mare danganzu danlo samloji chukchecha chukcher de danganzu lyungagu jewari tyenode pashe de nigruwa ari ni tam danganzu ge samlo gaji chukche yo danganzu samlo nadu sin magawe samlojiyona pashe nga soso magase mideleya mishandage gobu jigenda rogo cheda khozi kiwura da bene soso kiwyo mare 강아마 마하드누 삼 마하스 미델이야 콜레야 조고야 고야다 콜레야 안지 콘주게 지기 데니기 기부라 제베네 땅안주게 드누 셈레야 마키바 소소레 삼 마키바 기고레 안델레야 지기 레가디게 자월람로 야고야다 베지기 튕게데 야고레선 드누 삼로나 마키바 채고 제가 파줄런데야지요 마디게 소소레 파줄라 당위에 삼바디게 소소라 강아르 마디고데 And Delia Robert again, Bendigo Tumbuene, the Mishandaji Kolia Kobuchevene, the Midelia Magawa in higher, or that coin the name Maraconia, the Drogoche, did Miakum in the Sambia, Midelia Magawa. Just that the names and this to do Shimji Chevena, some of the Yago Mares, Raja Rangi, Raya, Kanga taken. Magoba is or that is so some thank you Maresati, Tangazuki, Georgie, Ansolia, Simki, Lotu, Tisan, Tisuba, some thank you Mara so Korea, Sungurwa.
When the thought of hostility or wish either to harm someone or for harm to come to them, such as their wishes not being fulfilled and so forth, when that arises within us, we may be with the person, or we may not be with them at all. It may be someone we know very well, we know slightly, or someone we don't know at all. And we have these thoughts about them. They probably aren't aware at all. So they are going through their life quite unaffected. But ourselves, we are deeply distressed. We are very unhappy. We are bitter and unhappy. And they are not impacted at all. And thinking like this, becomes very clear that this is a stupid way to behave, because we are only harming ourselves. And the more we think, the stronger this habit pattern is to think like this, because it's not necessarily directed at one person, but the stronger the habit pattern is, we'll think more readily like this about a wide number of people, it will rise more easily, abide for longer, and it will be more likely that we will express it to others. And when we express it to others, relationships that perhaps on the other person's side, they had no issue with us, and now suddenly they do, because we're acting towards them in an abusive manner, speaking to them in an abusive manner, physically acting towards them in an abusive manner. And a relationship then that perhaps had potential to change, now that becomes so much less likely. Again, thinking like this becomes abundantly clear that the person who primarily suffers is ourselves. And a third way to look at this, which again highlights really how stupid it is to think in this way, is that where we see a fault in someone and we're criticizing them and we're complaining about them, so we have this whole mental process going on where we're just thinking about all their faults and what they've done and what they've said and how idiotic they are, etc. They're unaffected, and we're deeply unhappy. But similarly, they may have some fantastic good qualities or good conditions in their life. They may have material conditions or emotional emotional good qualities, and we are jealous of those. And now we're criticizing them for what the good things they have in their life. So we're either criticizing them for their faults as we perceive them, or we are now jealous about what they have that's good in their life. So no matter what this person seems to do, good or bad, our mind stays afflicted. Our mind stays negative. We continue to suffer. This is really a bizarre way to act.
지산다 되니게 삼마다체 아니 가르쳐고리 람네 가도 대화 조르자 시도 소소 직 가와 되베이나라 가와 조베이네데 셴리아 디기 대화 주나 선비게 셴리 디기 요나 야고레 선비게 삼당고리 해제 지산 되니 삼다베네 셴리아 디기 주네 야고레 셴리 네비게 네바치나 디기 말에 선비 삼다베나 되니게 삼다베나 소소라리아 아니 강아 셈 흘려요 바디 대라요 바 안지 소소기 셴리아 디기 제ten도 야고 중샤선비도 오베 야고레 선비 야지간 주기 제수이라 차다 야고레 샤선비 되니 셴리아 디기 야고 중샤랍나 야고레 삼삼고도 소소 강아 팅 말어 베 야고레 셈 소소 초와 갈라나 지리그로 셴 야고 줘서 베 야고메데 베 사샤고 두가 중국어를 선배삼단 소소 강아리그로 제가 대자 강도 대화 조라자 시동아 가와 조베 가와 되베나다 가와 조베네다 명안도 가르치고 있으나 셴리아 디기 주나 선배삼로지다 셴기 동아드 매버 주나 선배삼로 따야디 가상셰바나 잠니 잠바다 제와 삼 따야디 계침보래 제가다 실륜아 이거네 셴레 뇌비게 삼바스 자와기네 당에메 선배게 아삼로디 온도스네 삼당고래 해서 그래.
So rather thinking in such a bizarre manner, the way we should think is in the next line. Venture forth to where happiness lies. This means then, we need to recognize, through relying on mindfulness, vigilance, and conscientiousness, when critical thoughts arise towards others or jealous thoughts arise to others. And when they do, apply the antidote that's presented in this line, in the fourth line here. When we see faults in others, then immediately, when we notice our mind is now criticizing them or complaining about this person, generate compassion for them. Compassion being the thought, may all beings be freed of suffering. So generate the thought, may this being be freed of this harmful way of thinking that leads to them to act or speak in such a manner. May this being be completely freed of all beings of suffering, all forms of suffering. May all beings be freed of all suffering. And I myself will strive to overcome all faults within me too. And to the degree that I have the fault that I'm observing in this person, I will strive to abandon it. And I will do so that I can be a skilled guide in helping others abandon all faults. So here we've transformed a way of thinking. A moment before we were criticizing and complaining, and now we've generated compassion. And we've made a commitment to strive ever more in our spiritual development so that we can be of benefit to others. Then similarly, should we notice jealousy towards others? Recognize this affliction within us and immediately apply the antidote. An antidote is to rejoice in their good quality, rejoice in what we generally call their good fortune, but they have created the causes that have now resulted in whatever has been attained. Rejoice in the causes that they have created and the results that they are experiencing. Moreover, one can commit to, when I have the opportunity, I will praise them. And I too will strive to accumulate such causes within myself so that I can be of ever greater benefit to others. So this then is a development of love, in that, I didn't express it so clearly, but this is a development of love, in that when one rejoices in others, generate the wish, may all beings have happiness. And these good conditions, these good circumstances that this person has, may all beings experience these. The causes that this being created so that they could have these good conditions, may all beings create such causes. And I myself will strive to develop similar causes myself so that I can become skilled and guide others how to develop such causes. And again, we've transformed an affliction of jealousy into the mind of love. And in this way, training skillfully like this, we strengthen our habituation to love and compassion. And we as people become ever more loving and ever more compassionate.
나네 가랑 착바 방자신 착바 메바 내버자 아니 차비 인데로 미톱지 탈비어 소장 줘버지세 다간지레 아주 유간의 통외네 내려 차바기요 말에서 차바기에디 베네 차바세디 베네 이두 원세를 하바 줬다제 내려 아니 지 되비 삼발데 차바세 지상 유간의 때문에 중앙 주기 치료 파미기 통하다 나위기 고야다 데니 통도 유칸에나 차바기요 말에서 차바드 방고그레스 지상 강라야 차바 방자신 제 차바 메바 내버자서 차바 마게와지 요고레지로
Abandon attachment to all things and abide free of desire. Abandon attachment to all things. So here we're being advised to guard against the arisal of attachment. An attachment arises so readily, so that we firstly need to recognize how readily attachment arises. From merely seeing something as pleasant, attachment is likely to follow. When we recognize this, relying on introspection and vigilance and mindfulness, be aware of our mind. And wherever we go, in particular, be aware of what we're seeing and hearing and thinking for the arisal of attachment, because it is something that arises so readily.
제가 차베 데로 미톱진스 차바 깨바 있나 차바디 차베기 아니 차바디기 깨인제는 안주기 깨와치말 하다 미고 도그레선 도구 말에서 제가 차바세디 고길로 깨인지래 제가디 제보디 누가 주마도 야가 용 말에서 제가 가서는 안주 차바께는 차바디 슈쳐셔도 차베기 깨인제는 안 컨트롤해 용 거래 컨트롤해야다. 컨트롤이야. 전에 네베 삼바. 네니리에 안나서 레양아 바사. 니기 깨워치만 안손에 깨야 차로. 지사 데 하다 미고와 토야다 바치치고래 제 차베되어 데조 미톱징스. 데조앙 라도 차바께바네 데니기 슈치베 컨트롤게 디기 세델레나 기부용고 말 라신니까라 강아티고레스. 아니 깨워치만 하다 미고와 톱투고 말해세. 토발에 바치치고래세. 엘링예 차베 데로 미톱징세 디테 직디기 되어시.
Recognizing the grave danger of attachment, we need to, as the text says, and abide free of desire. To abide free of desire, we need to recognize the great benefit of being free of desire. And we do this in conjunction with seeing the fault of desire or attachment. And as the third line then says, attachment fails to bring even the higher realms. So here we need to really be very clear the danger that attachment poses for us. Attachment doesn't lead to happiness. Attachment keeps us bound in cyclic existence. Attachment fails to bring even rebirth in the higher realms. And in fact, attachment itself is not only non-virtuous, it's that from attachment, anger arises. In fact, anger mostly, if not always, arises from attachment. We get angry because things are not going how we want. We are attached to having things go in a particular way, and when they don't, we get angry. When someone doesn't act in accordance with our beliefs, we get frustrated or annoyed. If someone doesn't agree with our views or opinions, we get angry, get frustrated, annoyed. So this anger, frustration, annoyance arises from attachment. Attachment to wanting things to go our way, attachment to our views, attachment to getting our own way. And anger then follows. So we need to reflect in this way to see the grave danger that attachment plays.
디기 롭산데 가르sun 거래세네 당아 주기 디기 야다 동화세디 치 토네 조응아도 낭sem레데 용고레스 제산 디기 주비에디야 조 낭sem레데 주고레 동화세디야 낭sem레데 세고고레스 동화 야다 강아체디야 낭sem레데 용고레스 디네 자다 셈 가르스제네 깨바이나 Dungaligore, Rashinigala, Dungaligo, Kangaligore, Sem Ganiskebana, Rashinigala, Pandoria, the Tiga, the Yunkure said, this same needy mortuary or what answer. Chesa Dinenza, that is ya, Anchike, Shen, Rangel, Lama, Sopa, the Shen Yundan Chalia, Anchike, Zikur Mepa, and the Chike, Naya Yabaina, this same the notorious, Gelatina Rashinigala, Dungayoya, Chixia. Then Shen Dang Yu Semba, Shen Nubi Samba Jebaina, De, and Sem Gambari, Della, and Rangla Rashinigala Nubi. Never to Dunga yes, Dunga, Guti Solitin, Sem Desolitin Ligore. And Yulia, Chapa, Shuja, Chapa Javana, Chavi Uncle Konraki, Dine, Rashin Nigala, Gangatayaki, and the chicken, Dilior Chesan, Chatantiki, Sem Desolitin Ligores, Chesan Desumeva Sogores, and Water Shiksha. Down under 다는 아기야다 디술야 가네스 메버스고 제셈 탑람 야가디 가르딘 거래라도 다랑게 라마당 안제윤대절야 구십지야다 아니 구십지 안데라 구송토 윤된 잼발라서바 데바제 거래스 니제바이나 아니 셈디게 아기야다 디시카 그래서 아니 젤야 다위에 삼바도 네베 삼바데 가네스 가그래라나 삼나카스 메버스야 삼나카르당 거래라나 샬야 잼바다 제와공고 삼당 거래스 and the chicken, Rangi, Semjan Tam, Rangi Pamaji, Yonga Yimba, Rangi Pama Yimba, Dushe Samdang, Shen Chunga in Simjakanis, Rangi Buji, Yonga, the Soji Yonga, she's a Rangla Ben, Java Tanya Yuba, Samdang Kore, Dene Samdavena, and Jambata Jawa little goodies. She's Dene, and the Lunga Nichu Chada, the Nubi Samba Meva Suedi, Shen Nubi Chow, Lunga Sushan, Nubi Chow, Tunichime, and Piu Sumi, Sujim, do some Tangores. Sujum Suya, Jay Jam Zio Comia, and the Semjan Tamja Rangi, getting Chimbo, but Jin Chimbo, Samdaya, and the Semjan Jigarangi, Lama, Yundenchen, and Jiggy, Papa, Denike, Desolia, and Benet Kusuntuki, Yundente, Debaje, Lucian, Guishapia, some of the Dusigores, Desojabana, Desi Yuriki, Pachayung Mares, some of the Desolatene, Rashaniga, some of the Densi Covaina. And Rangi Lunga Vijoba de Yakoche, Shania Pembeja to Gore, Shania Pemba to Shana Diki to Gore, the Rana in a Diki Yungore, just a Diki Yun, Setele, some Narashi Nicola Pemba. And Deligi, Jebu Diki, Gewachima in a Soso Lada Miko Montoya, Diki Yun, and Tarbada Tamjikimbo Tovalaya, Rangi Yamlingi, Yaria Jugu Banza, Tanya Jugo. Yes, that ocean, some no Semdelia, Yatu Yawa Cheche. Yagading to Yana Yanos and Bishop Tangore. Do a ripa, Gedina, Mayana, Magia, Donala, never so get Tablam Chigore, said that didn't show on to get that looked in day and did.
As we're continuing through the text, a theme that continues throughout is that in order to achieve happiness, peace of mind, stability within our way of thinking, all depends on cultivating virtuous qualities within ourselves. It's not so dependent on what's around us, but rather how we relate to what's around us, how we relate to ourselves. Similarly, with eliminating problems. To eliminate suffering and misery in our life comes about through changing our way of thinking. So there's a close relationship between both of these, achieving happiness and eliminating suffering. And that is, it all depends on our way of thinking. This is where our focus needs to be, not on the external world, but on developing the inner world and thereby being able to interact skillfully with others, interact skillfully with the external world. And in fact, whether we are living a life of benefit or not, it depends on our way of thinking. So this is what we need to focus on. And in all the trainings that have been presented here, these jewels of the Bodhisattva's garland, these are all trainings to transform our mind from its habituation to non-virtuous or harmful ways of thinking and become ever more positive, more virtuous within our way of thinking, become a more wholesome person. And here then today we heard a number of different trainings that we need to engage in. So we need to cultivate good qualities within us, on the one hand, and recognize ways of thinking which are harmful and we need to abandon. These two are done together. Relate to them like a scale. That's just like when one's mind is deeply afflicted and one is very unhappy, it's difficult for virtue to arise. Similarly, when strong love has arisen, for example, it's difficult for the afflictions to arise. So one can train in these two together, recognizing, as we've just seen, for example, the grave danger that attachment arises. Attachment which firstly arises so readily, arises for most of what we see and hear, just from liking something it arises, and from our thought process, always looking for temporary happiness, and attachment arises. And recognize it's not that it just arises so readily, but from this other afflictions, such as anger, can follow. We need to see the grave danger of attachment. Then on the positive side, we've had advice here to reflect on the good qualities of others. Certainly, it's of utmost importance to repeatedly or regularly remind ourselves of the good qualities of our Lama. And this is so that we naturally, spontaneously, sincerely have respect for him, because this opens us up to his guidance, to his good qualities, being open to his good qualities, and thereby us developing them for ourselves. Moreover, an attitude of respect shouldn't be only to those who are our spiritual teachers, but to those who are spiritually developed in a similar way, as well as to all beings. We should look at their good qualities, rather than criticizing them, rather than looking at their faults. Turn our mind to their good qualities. All beings have good qualities. In this way, we're keeping our mind positive, and when the mind is positive, it's much easier to develop virtue. If our mind is criticizing and complaining, it's very difficult then to develop virtue. So we need to rather keep our mind positive, recognizing the qualities in others, and with this as a basis, we can generate love and compassion for them. A further tool that we heard here was relate to others in the same way that we relate to our parents, whom we have reflected well on the kindness they've shown to us, or relate to them like our children, with care. This too opens us up to the possibility of easily generating love and compassion for those, even if they are strangers or we don't have a particularly close relationship towards them. Or similarly, if we see fault in others, to rather generate compassion. Or if we have jealousy towards others, rather generate love towards them, wanting them only to experience happiness. And furthermore, we've also heard about the need to cultivate an ethical attitude, the mind of ethical restraint, where we commit to restraining our mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions, and we do so through relying on conscientiousness, mindfulness, and vigilance. And we commit to restraining our mind and thereby our body and speech. At the very outset, we commit to not physically harming others or speaking to others in a harmful manner, and develop this further through taking control of our own minds. Conjoined with this, or accompanying this training, we also train in reflecting on the kindness of others, recognizing the kindness of others, as well as the benefit that others bring to our life in this and past lives, thereby generating the wish to repay the kindness of others. Because when we see all beings as kind, recognize that all beings directly and indirectly bring us benefit, that opens us up to the possibility of generating love and compassion towards all. Focus on the good qualities of others. Keep our mind virtuous. And then lastly, we also include in this reflection the understanding of the benefits that it brings to ourselves. Immediately our mind is happier, and thereby we immediately have a beneficial impact on others. So for the short term, there's benefit to ourselves and others, and in the long term, through the karma that we create, it aids our spiritual development and brings the attainment of liberation from suffering, complete lasting happiness ever closer, as well as the attainment of enlightenment itself. So that in brief then is what we've looked at thus far. So thank you. We'll stop here and then we'll continue from the same place this afternoon.